Breaking news from the NFL in a stunning development. The Ravens have backed out of the trade for star pass rusher Maxx Crosby. Now, the Raiders announced the news but did not offer any more details. Last week, the Ravens acquired the five-time Pro Bowler in a blockbuster for 2 first-round picks in a move that was supposed to improve their pass rush considerably. But now, it's off? Here with CBS Sports NFL analyst Ryan Wilson. Ryan, we see the statement that the Raiders have put out saying, quote, the Baltimore Ravens have backed out of our trade agreement for Maxx Crosby. We will have no further comment at this time. A lot of questions around that. What is your immediate reaction when you see this?
This is me marking out the 14th pick no longer belonging to the Las Vegas Raiders, because that was the pick that they were going to get from the Ravens. So a couple things. We don't know anything other than the words that were...
We're just getting an update that, according to NFL Network's Ian Rappaport, it is a medical reason.
Okay, so...
Which, of course, these come into play when trades come.
Absolutely. And, again, Wednesday at 4 p.m. is sort of the deadline, and a lot of things can happen between now and then. But this is... interesting. A couple things. So the Ravens still need help at edge rusher. They could draft someone at 14, but you're not going to get a player of the caliber of Maxx Crosby, number one. The other thing, this is a huge issue for the Raiders in terms of, they have a ton of salary cap space, but in terms of the rebuilding process we were talking about with Fernando Mendoza and everything that comes with that, because you had pick 14 to perhaps get an offensive lineman. You had the pick in the 2027 draft as a first-round pick that you no longer have. So it complicates things a little bit. We'll see what happens, whether another team might be interested in Maxx. What that means medically, we don't know right now. But it is, you said it. It's always fun to see the curveballs that you get thrown as we work through this sort of pre-tampering period.
Right.
And this was a big one.
Well, and of course, this is a legal negotiating window in which none of these deals can become official until 4 p.m. on Wednesday when the new league year begins. And that might be beneficial for the Raiders, who might have to reevaluate some of these commitments they've made to some of these players if that Maxx Crosby salary is still on their salary cap,
yeah.
on their books. That might affect what moves they're able to make with these free agency acquisitions they've agreed to.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of moving parts there. This is where your salary cap specialist makes his or her money in your front office. And, we talked to John Spytek last week in Indianapolis at the Combine, the GM for the Raiders, and everything was, well, we want to have Maxx with us. They're not going to break news on an interview at the Combine. But you do wonder now what this means because of the move they've made thus far in terms of they've signed Tyler Linderbaum. That's a huge deal.
Yeah.
In terms of the money committed to that. They brought in Jalen Naylor and Kwity Paye. They brought in the 2 former Georgia linebackers, Nakobe Dean and Quay Walker. And we'll see what this means with the max dollar amount should they not be able to move on from him, because that does create some conversations. I think they have enough salary cap space to make it work, and you can push the pennies around to figure out how to move forward. But it's complicated.
Yeah, and you mentioned pushing the pennies around too. Perhaps right now the Ravens are backing out, saying as is with this certain, medical, whatever it is, the news that we will continue to figure out. Maybe they reevaluate what goes into the trade. Maybe we reevaluate the assets that are changing sides. I mean, we've seen these things happen before, but perhaps not on such a big stage of a star player like Maxx Crosby.
Absolutely. So it could be a compensation question. We don't know what the conversations were between the 2 GMs about what that looked like. And so there's a lot to sort through and a lot that we don't know. But we do know, based on the tweets from the Raiders, is that this is the Ravens backing out from reports that it was a medical issue. We don't know what the issues are, but also the dominoes that fall now in terms of the Raiders still need an edge rusher. The Ravens still need an edge rusher. The Raiders still now have to figure out how to build around their quarterback, who they're going to take. Although maybe next thing we'll find out is that Fernando Mendoza won't be the first overall pick.
Oh my gosh, right? We can't be coming up with this many plot twists. But if you're the Ravens right now too, and you're looking at this scenario saying, okay, Maxx Crosby maybe not passing the physical in the way we like, do you go after Trey Hendrickson? Do you pivot that direction? And
I think Jonathan Jones reported this earlier today that Trey Henderson, the money he was asking and what teams were willing to offer, they were so far apart that that gap will have to be shortened in order to make that happen. But that could be a plan B. Now, he had medical concerns the last few years in Cincinnati. That's why he didn't play at certain points. Part of you wonder if he was just sort of voluntarily just choosing not to play because he was having issues with the organization.
Load management.
Yeah, load management, to borrow a term. So there's a lot to sort through and a lot that we certainly don't know right now.
All right, CBS Sports NFL analyst Ryan Wilson, thank you so much for the insight on this evolving breaking news story. We're going to continue to break down what happened here. Ravens backing out of the Maxx Crosby.
Kyler Murray. Adam, let's start there. What are we expecting to happen here when we expect the team to release him tomorrow?
Well, Laura, we think they could release him as early as tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern. He has a bonus due later this week that the Cardinals do not intend to pay. They'll have to release him by then. They could do it at their discretion. Once he is released, there is expected to be a robust market for him, but I think people around the league regard the Vikings as the leading contender. As for Kirk Cousins, he also will be released by this time tomorrow from Atlanta, making him a free agent. He does not sound to be in any rush to go find a new team. He may take a much more patient approach and see what's out there. He may wait for a quarterback to be injured. He may wait to see what happens with Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh, but he's not going to be in any rush. And you know what? He can afford to be. He's made an awful lot of money in his career. He can sit back, have a lemonade, and relax and wait until there's some sort of quarterback opening.
Lemonade, huh?
Is that his drink of choice? Yeah. Lemonade? I like that.
Schefter has.
Yeah, well,
he
that
can
looks
have a
like
lemonade
water,
while
but...
he gets his haircut at Supercuts.
Hey, I love those commercials. It's so good. Why not? That's very refreshing. Okay, so as we continue on here, reminder that if you're not in front of your TV all the time, that's okay. We forgive you, but you can scan that QR code on your screen, and that'll give you all the updates from Adam Schefter on the ESPN app. There's going to be a lot more news, okay, as Adam's talking about here. You don't want to miss anything. Lewis, let's talk about Tua, Malik Willis. They're already off the board. What is the market for Kyler Murray when you think about what he can bring to a team, and maybe specifically Minnesota, because it does seem like all signs are pointing that direction?
Well, starting with Kyler, what he brings to a football team is undeniable on the football field. You can see it. Anybody can turn on the tape. Everyone has access to all 22. And you can see what he brings as far as being a dual threat. As a former defensive back, and J. Mack can attest to this, he's a nightmare. He's a nightmare because of the fact the way he can extend plays. Quarterbacks who can extend plays like this cause you to lose sleep. And that's why you want to work with guys like this. It's what else comes along with Kyler Murray that if you're doing the homework on him, that's the kind of thing that you're going to have to get at. Who authentically is he? Both as an individual, as a guy who, when he comes into your locker room, how he interacts with the rest of the players, how he interacts with the offense, how he interacts with the quarterback room. Because, look, when you look at his tape, you're sitting there and you're going, okay, so why didn't it work in Arizona? What is true about some of the reports that you heard coming out of Arizona about whether or not he's committed to doing everything that he needs to do off the field to be great on the football field? And is he going to bring that to us in Minnesota in particular, since that's obviously the most natural landing spot? Because, look, KOC, Kevin O'Connell, and Josh McCown, I believe, are the salt of the earth when it comes to quarterback evaluation, development, implementation. I love those guys. Yeah. They better do their homework, because to me, you bring him in there, you're sending a definite message to J.J. McCarthy, and one that he's not going to like, and we don't know how he's going to handle, quite honestly.
Well, especially after you let Sam Darnold go. Yeah. He goes on to win a Super Bowl. Not that they could have predicted that, but that's what happened. So, yeah.
And I think of it all, you look at it, they do bring in Kyler Murray. He's a very different player than J.J. McCarthy. So I think that does bring up that conversation. And the J.J. McCarthy side of it is just like, you better go out there and perform. Like, Kyler Murray is going to be potentially on a one-year deal where he's making league minimum. So they're not saying, hey, we're going to bring Kyler in, and that's our entire future. But I do think it's interesting when you start to look at setups. Atlanta Falcons brought in Tua Tagovailoa, a quarterback that has some similarities to a guy like Michael Penix Jr. So you can see those guys and the offense going together. I look at all of this. If it doesn't work out in Minnesota for Kyler Murray, where do you start to look? The Indianapolis Colts is interesting to me, just in the sense of if they can't work out a deal with Daniel Jones that's long-term, now you have him on just a one-year deal. So it's like, what is going to be your future? Is he going to be healthy week one? If he's not, you have a guy like Kyler Murray that can go out there and could be effective potentially for this offense.
I mean, Dan, you brought that up to Pat and the guys earlier. They weren't totally buying it, but just walk us through the scenario that you laid out there. It's no slight to Daniel Jones necessarily, but you bring Kyler Murray in for cheap. No. Sounds like a good plan, right?
Well, I think in Lewis's perspective on this, when it comes to like team building, is going to be really important, because I do think that if you're Indianapolis and you have the transition tag on Daniel Jones, it's important to just take a step back in this negotiation. Daniel Jones had a great year. I think everyone is rooting for Daniel Jones to get another nice contract. But he is a player that is coming off of an Achilles tear, and a couple years ago had an ACL tear. Okay, so you've got this player that does have a little bit of some significant injury in his past. So that has to, I would imagine, be a part of the conversation. And if you're Indy, are you making a call to Kyler Murray and being like, well, we think we're going to have Daniel Jones, or in conversation with Daniel Jones. So is this a place that would interest you? Is it only Minnesota for Kyler Murray? If you're Kyler Murray and it's Indy as a maybe and Minnesota as a maybe, which one do you find more appealing? I just think it's, I believe Kyler is going to go to Minnesota, yes, but I do think it's important for Indianapolis to at least have a conversation about it.
Adam, I have a couple questions. So first of all, does Kyler, how much does Kyler control all of this, right? How much of a say does he have in that? Let's explain that to people. And then furthermore, what does the timeline really look like here? Because we're talking about, the official new league year starts tomorrow at 4 p.m., but maybe they wait a little bit to release him. He does have that bonus you keep alluding to, so it's going to be before the end of the week, but just illustrate that for us a little bit.
Yeah. It's a $19.5 million bonus that triggers for 2027. It's due on March 15th, which is Sunday.
Okay.
So that means that the Cardinals